our counties to order. Let each and every county governor, that's your work as a governor. That's why you are CEO. It doesn't matter where you found that county to be in. File a plan with the Senate and say, County X. And you know, unfortunately, Mr. Speaker, we haven't been as diligent as possible as senators. You need to know that as senator for Siaya, as senator for Kitui, what percentage of my budget is going to development, what percentage is going to recurrent. Once you know that, expect of your governor to file in this house a plan so that you know that by 2027, Mr. Speaker, we have forced our counties to spend in excess of 65% in development activities, Mr. Speaker. Otherwise, what will have happened, we will have simply turned our county governors into paymaster generals. There are county governments, Mr. Speaker, that are spending 50-50. 50% on recurrent, 50% on development. That, or even more, actually, I'm informed, Mr. Speaker. That's really unfortunate. We are failing as Senate. I expect us that the committee will be able to lead us into that decision, Mr. Speaker. So what are the eventual recommendations, Mr. Speaker, of the committee? I see a deletion of the second schedule of the bill, setting out recurrent expenditure ceilings for the various county assemblies and county executive, and substituted with a new one. Of course, I want to believe this is in reaction to the request that came to you. And there is good justification. In fact, as Senate, you know, county assemblies are our brothers and sisters. Or they are our actually twin institutions. Without proper county assemblies, you cannot have successful implementation of devolution. You know the question that was brought here by Senator Cherargei yesterday, and we all made our contributions about what is happening in our county assemblies thanks to what SRC has done. Listening in on the good ideas that were being shared by colleague senators yesterday, and there are people, I think it was Senator Ojenda, who pointed out to us, and we all agree with him, that paying our members of county assembly well alone is not enough to empower that institution of our county assembly, Mr. Speaker. Perhaps it's a time that Senate also led in this conversation in ensuring that what is it that we expect of each of our 47 county assemblies, and what will be the costing to ensure that members of our county assembly are able to do or carry out their oversight responsibility without having to incur personal expenditure. That when they go to inspect projects, what tools are we providing to these county assemblies in terms of personnel and the knowledge and skills that they need to check? Many a times, Mr. Speaker, if you expect an MCA, even you as a senator, to just with your ordinary eye, read through the bill of quantities and look at a bridge and expect to say, oh, I think this is in compliance with what the State Department expected of a road or a bridge, Mr. Speaker, is expecting too much. You need professionals to do this job. And we can actually capacitate our county assemblies by ensuring that these people exist and there is a way and mechanism of checking. Otherwise, if you expect, it's like an internal audit department of any organization, Mr. Speaker. You expect them to read and go through all these proposals, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, I know there are quite a number of my colleagues who want to make a contribution. This is a very important bill. I'll just say my last point, that there is a proposal also, Mr. Speaker, that actually within 90 days of the tabling of this report, county assemblies need to submit to CRA. And that, Senator, why CRA alone and not to Senate as well? They need to file with this House as well, because we check on the operations of all the county government, which includes the county assemblies. Let them file, if it was possible, and this is something that you can amend later on when you meet as a committee. As they file with with CRA, perhaps a copy needs to be filed with this House, so that we see how many are not in compliance with this regulation that this House, resolution rather, that this House passed in 2021 on the number of members in each of the respective committee, county assemblies, the purposes of monitoring compliance with guidelines on committee composition, Mr. Speaker. Senator Ojenda mentioned to us yesterday that in his county assembly, you find a particular one member serving in 15 committees. You'd have to be a magician to be effective if you're serving in more than... Mr. Speaker, for those that have been here long enough, you know that the truth of the matter is that as a member of parliament, a member of county assembly, you can't be effective properly beyond 2 to 3 committees. That's a reality. because of the demands of time and the many other things that you have to do as a member of parliament or a member of our county assembly. And that is what we are expecting of our county assemblies, Mr. Speaker, and I hope the same can be concluded. So, good job, Senator Roba. That's a proposal that we give to you as members of Senate. Of course, I see you have also gone further and tackled a very divisive issue that has been in this Senate for quite a long time. County-specific requests. You know, I see a habit, and I say this with a lot of tremendous respect to my colleagues on the minority and majority side, a habit that is creeping into this Senate that wasn't there before, where before voting on a bill, one way or the other, people say, what is in it specifically for my people? While it's your primary responsibility, that alone cannot be your basis for vote on a particular matter, because in almost all matters that come before this Senate, Mr. Speaker, there will always be gainers on a particular front and losers in a particular front. If you make it your business to just look out for your own particular county, what about the day others will also say, on this one, we are not voting with you because your county is benefiting? And the truth of the matter, Mr. Speaker, is that there is no particular time where on your own you'll be able to raise or marshal the 24 delegations. You'll always rely on the collective spirit of all the 47 delegations that are in this House, Mr. Speaker. And by the way, people like Senator Wambua and the rest that have served in Senate long enough will tell you that many of these divisions are quite blood within a very short time in Senate. These ones of majority and minority. Before then, people caucus on need basis, and there are many things that happen in between. And therefore, I want to encourage colleagues that when a bill such as this comes before the House, it's not just enough to say, oh, because I say that because I know that they have dealt with county-specific needs, specifically Tana River, Kilifi County, Kajiado County Assembly, and eventually, I think those three counties, Mr. Speaker, county assemblies, that made specific requests to this House, Mr. Speaker. And I'm glad that our colleagues have requested it. We have done it before. We began with, when we first came to this House, Mr. Speaker, there are counties that did not have even offices for their governors to meet, because previously there were either districts or very small administrative units. This House, in its wisdom, because we consider that all the 47 units are important to this county, allocated to more than 5 counties. I think Nyandarua, I can't remember the other counties, Tharaka Nithi, about 4 counties, for them to put up their headquarters. And we pass it here without much of a half. I never saw anybody say that, oh, why are you building a county assembly, a county headquarters for Tharaka Nithi, yet I don't thoughtfulness that I expect of each of us, Mr. Speaker. Finally, Mr. Speaker, it's just a thought that I have shared, and I want Senator Roba and members of Budget and Finance Committee, this is now finally for the final time. I know I've said like 3 or 4 times, finally for the final time. What are we going to do on this issue of delayed disbursements? We have to think through it. We have to give proposals and even radical ideas to Treasury. Because if we expect Treasury to sort it on behalf of our county governments, perhaps they will never do it, Mr. Speaker. Is it not possible, Mr. Speaker, that as Senate, we gather the collective wisdom of all the colleagues that are here and demand of the national government that they issue a bond specifically for funding devolution? And whatever monies they attract on that particular bond, Mr. Speaker, be put in a consolidated account that we will have the national government continue to add on to that particular kitty as the years, as a month go by, Mr. Speaker, such that if you issue a bond of maybe 200 or 300 billion, Mr. Speaker, and I know it's not easy to attract such monies, but it is possible if we went out of our way. I have seen what World Bank has been able to do, the government of China, on a specific department like the roads department alone, Mr. Speaker. Raise $1 billion or $2 billion, Mr. Speaker. Start even with just 100 billion, Mr. Speaker. And have the national government know that this is what they would spend perhaps in about 3 to 4 months, because we are developing here 385. In between that period, because if you check over the long period, Mr. Speaker, there's always a delay of between 2 to 4 months or 3 months most of the time. That money will be sufficient such that each county knows that by 2nd or the 3rd of every month, they have received what is their expected disbursement on that particular month. Then the national government, because we understand the economic situation that we find ourselves in, fills up into that particular bond. And the CRF account for devolution can be set up at a central bank. So such that after 3 months, that constant figure of 100 is never moved. Anytime it reduces, there is a top-up. Because it is impossible to imagine, Mr. Speaker, that we will develop our counties if governors have to wait for 3, 4, 5, or 6 months sometimes, Mr. Speaker, before they get their disbursement. And this problem is not likely to go away soon, Mr. Speaker, especially with the debt situation that we find ourselves in. So we have to think, and by resolution, I don't know, by whatever means, demand of Treasury to come and appear before this House and give our proposals. We'll have ours, but it cannot continue to be in this. The present system that is being used, Mr. Speaker, is not tenable. This is not devolution as expected from us, as enshrined in our Constitution. With those very many remarks, Mr. Speaker, I beg to support and celebrate the good work of the members of this committee. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Senator Wambua.
I thank you, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, from the onset, I want to begin by saying that you don't get a second chance to make the first impression. And I think for Senator Roba and their team, this being their first Kara, they have done a good job. They have created a good impression. Mr. Speaker, to colleague senators, those that are debating Kara for the first time, it's important for them to know, and all of us to remember, that perhaps actually this is the only bill that originates here and ends here, and our word on it is final. This is the most important bill for the Senate, that we are now sharing revenue to our respective counties. And Mr. Speaker, I want to say two things before I go into this bill.
Order, Majority Leader and Senator Veronica. May the senator be heard in silence, just like you are heard in silence.
You know, Mr. Speaker, you have defended me, so that's fine. So let me just continue. Mr. Speaker, I was saying the two things that Senator Cheriot has mentioned that I want to emphasize on is the role of the Senate on matters devolution. And I think if you don't get that right, then everything else that we do will be done in vain. Speaker, without mentioning names, because there is no need to mention names, I was a bit taken aback when we were debating the Equalization Fund. And that some senators said that they are not going to vote for it because their counties are not included. And I said, Mr. Speaker, if we take that route, then we, instead of defending devolution, we just kill it. The Speaker, if a substantial number of counties benefit from our work, then those counties don't have to be the counties that have sent us here. That is success of devolution, and we must all be proud of counties benefiting from our work. The Speaker, the other issue is what this committee has done on the matter of the sharing, the horizontal sharing of this revenue among the 47 counties, guided, of course, by the third basis. Now, Mr. Speaker, there has been a debate, and that debate is coming up again, so we also have to be cautious. The one man, one vote, one shilling debate Speaker, I am happy that we ring-fenced the matter of land area index in the third basis. And that, Mr. Speaker, every conversation that we are going to have on the sharing of resources to our counties must always take into account one man, one vote, 1 shilling, 1 kilometer. Because, Mr. Speaker, there is something we call distance to service. The amount of money and time and personnel and vehicles that you spend to deliver drugs in the farthest end of Marsabit County must count for the monies that are allocated to that county. The Speaker, is very easy here in Nairobi to distribute drugs in hospitals, 50 hospitals, in an hour's time. There are other counties where it will take a whole month to distribute the same drugs to the same number of health facilities. And so the issue of distance to service as captured in land area index is an important one, so that as this debate begins to re-emerge, we don't lose out on that. The Speaker, coming back to the CARA for 2023, the Speaker, it is also ridiculous, and this I want the chairman and the vice chair to take note, that there are certain things that going forward we will have to deal with. One of those issues is the issue of pursuing almost absolute autonomy of the county assemblies from the executive. That, Mr. Speaker, we move beyond just an amendment on the second schedule, but endeavor to ensure that once the assemblies defend their budgets and their budgets are passed and approved, then they are fully in charge of their budgets without making any reference whatsoever to the executive. The Speaker, the matter that was brought here yesterday by Senator Cherargei from Nandi on salaries and allowances of members of the county assemblies. The Speaker, that debate is alive today. And I was actually speaking to the minority leader in the county assembly of Kitui, Honorable Nganga from Miambani Ward. And he was telling me, you know, Senator, actually we are not asking for more money for now. We're not even asking for more money. We already have that money in our budget. The only thing that we're asking is to find a way of reallocations of those monies and the revenues so that all the money that we have is not lumped in travel. And actually he was very honest with me and told me that's one of the reasons why every now and then your MCRs are either in Mombasa or they are in Naivasha or they are in Dubai or in Turkey, just try and make up for the deficits that they face. The Speaker, the committee on budget needs to take the lead in looking for what amendments we need to bring to the PFM Act to attain that autonomy in terms of the spending by county assemblies and make sure that there is proper flexibility on the way they use their budget without reference to the executives. Now, Speaker, the second thing is on the issue of committees. And the majority leader has mentioned it in passing. In fact, in my conversation with the budget committee chair, he mentioned to me that there are some counties, assemblies, where they have in excess of 25 committees. And yet, the ideal is between 14 and 16 committees. That's a regulation that the Budget and Finance Committee must ensure that all county assemblies comply with. Mr. Speaker, there is the matter of the exchequer release to county assemblies, to county governments. Mr. Speaker, this is my second last point. You know, Mr. Speaker, there are some quick wins, and I expect that Senator Roba will take very keen interest in this one. All county governments and assemblies run accounts in commercial banks in their respective counties. Mr. Speaker, those banks are making money and profits using the money, the county monies that pass through those accounts. So, Speaker, the last time I checked, this country may be doing badly financially, but we are not necessarily insolvent. The Speaker, this committee, the Committee on Budget, can help county governments by making it a precondition for commercial banks where the revenues...
Committee of the whole in this house, where Treasury will be here. We have also representation from Council of Governors, and we discuss, because if it is already agreed that resources are supposed dispersed on timely basis, but look at now, 3 months, 4 months, the counties have not received the resources. They have not paid salary for the last 3 months. County assemblies are closing, or our hospitals are closing because they want to go on cost law or strike. So I agree that if Treasury do not want to follow the schedule that has been agreed upon, then we set a fund so that we have at least what the little majority has proposed, that we have like a 3-month cash in a particular account, so that every month by the 2nd or 3rd, if Treasury does not release directly what is required to be released, the controller and Treasury controller budget releases those resources directly to the counties, so that the counties don't go without funds. And because there are many applications, the moment they delay in terms of payment of salaries, it means basically KRA will be on them. There are loans. There are some of the employees, or most of the employees, would have taken facilities from the banks. There are those who have taken loans from the SACCOs, and the resources are due by end of every month. So, Honorable Speaker, it's very important that we ensure Treasury release, as they release resources to national government, they also release resources to our counties, so that our counties we don't stifle devolution, Honorable Speaker. Honorable Speaker, I don't want to say much. I just want to say that it is important that we pass this law, so that it is signed into law, so that as soon as by end of this month, our MCS then can start debating the budgets at the counties, so that as soon as we go to the next financial year, the county should be ready to receive money from the national government and disperse. And I also believe we need to give a condition to the counties, their own source of revenue, A in A. Most of the counties are not collecting enough. If they are not collecting, we need CRA to give a condition, to give an incentive to those who meet the target, so that they can get additional revenue, Honorable. Oh, Madam Speaker, I thought the Mr. Speaker has already gone, so we have Madam Speaker on the chair. Sorry, Madam. So, finally, Honorable Speaker, I I don't have much. I just want to ask our colleagues, let us pass the bill so that our counties can get resources as soon as we begin the next financial year. Thank you, Madam Speaker.
Senator Sifuna.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. Allow me to join my colleagues who have also thanked the committee on finance and budget for a job very well done. Madam Speaker, in continuation of the discussion we were having yesterday, I would want the House to pay attention to a matter that has been referred to by the committee at page 14 of that report, Madam Speaker, on the question of the need for revenue allocation that actually anticipate the conditions in the country and on the ground. If you look at that item number 11, Madam Speaker, the committee is telling us that inflation, the annual inflation currently starts at 6.5%. And the problem we have with this, Madam Speaker, is that every single year, the amount that is allocated to the counties must take into account some of these issues so that you do not look like you are adding revenue or resources to the counties, but actually in the larger macroeconomic climate, you are doing the exact opposite or nothing at all. So, Madam Speaker, if indeed it is true that annual inflation is currently at 6.5, and then you look at what we as a Senate approved to go to the counties in terms of marginal increase, it was only representing about 4%. The 15 billion extra in the division of revenue is about 4% of the entire amount allocated last year of 370 billion shillings. What that tells you, Madam Speaker, is that if you merge those two figures, the annual inflation and the amount, the marginal increase in the allocation to the counties, is that we have actually done a disservice to the counties, and this is part of the issue we were raising yesterday and on the date of a debate on division of revenue. Madam Speaker, as Nairobi, for instance, we had an allocation of 19.25 billion in the financial year ending June 2023, and we are getting a marginal increase of only 823 million shillings, Madam Speaker, in this particular financial year. Now, 823 million in the context of the problems of Nairobi, and I will give you the first example, that we have outstanding pending bills in Nairobi of 100 billion shillings. Madam Speaker, this financial year was the first time the County of Nairobi was building an ICU hospital. In the history of devolution, this was the first time we are having an ICU bed at Mama Lucy Hospital. If you look at the needs of the people of Nairobi, Madam Speaker, I will continue to remind my colleagues that when it comes to the division of revenue, we must assess all these factors and ensure that the counties get money that is actually substantial for them to make any meaningful progress. In fact, this position is further buttressed by the submissions of the Council of Governors themselves at page 5 of that report, Madam Speaker. And this I want to just read verbatim from the report of the committee itself. Under paragraph 31, these are the submissions of the Council of Governors, that the increase of 15.425 billion, they call the increase itself a paltry increase, and I agree with the Council of Governors. And they say the county governments will face major challenges in the performance of their functions and delivery of services to citizens in financial year 2023-2024, given the paltry allocation that we gave them as Senate. Be that as it may, Madam Speaker, there are things that at least I am happy that the committee listened to. The members of the Nairobi County Assembly did appear before this committee, and because of certain unique issues in the Nairobi County Assembly, I am happy that the committee listened to them, and they have approved an increase of about 200 million shillings in the ceiling of expenditure of the County Assembly of Nairobi. Madam Speaker, as you know, Kenya has become an increasingly litigious society, that people are going to court on just about every single issue and action that is taken by the County Assembly. So the Nairobi County Assembly has faced growing legal bills because of the many cases that involve the County Assembly, the litigation that comes from impeachment of governors, the litigation that comes from the legislation that they pass. And Madam Speaker, just about every act that or law legislation that is debated or passed in the County Assembly of Nairobi is actually subject to litigation. And this, I believe, is part of the robust structure of our constitution, that in fact, every citizen has a right to challenge these things, whether it is on parking fees, whether it is on advertising fees, whether it is on the review of our evaluation role. Every single one of these matters has found its way to the courts, such that the demand on litigation alone in the County Assembly of Nairobi now is reported to be 400 million shillings. Madam Speaker, secondly, there's a question of the increase in the cost of public participation. I have heard my colleagues here refer only to the geographical size of the counties as one of the factors that determine or affect the cost of public participation. But you should also factor in the sort of population, the sort of population that you are governing. Because Nairobians, Madam Speaker, as my delegation member, Honorable Karen Nyamu will bear me witness, we are very woke here in Nairobi. I think that's the term that the young people are using. That every single thing you do in the name of the people of Nairobi is subject to question by the people of Nairobi, and they would want to participate. Just 2 weeks ago, Madam Speaker, the county government, because it is undertaking a program, what they're calling urban regeneration of the old city council estates, they announced public participation for about 13 of the old city council estates that are the subject of redevelopment, that they want to build new houses in these places. Madam Speaker, I had the opportunity to only attend 2 of those public participations just to see that there was effective public participation happening in those forums. I went to Ofafa Jericho in Eastlands, and I also went to Woodley Estate. Madam Speaker, the one at Ofafa Jericho was actually quite animated, and by the time I arrived there, the residents had already kicked out the people from the county who are coming to conduct public participation. So when the county assembly tells me that, in fact, the cost of public participation in Nairobi has gone up, and the nature and the need for engagement of the citizens on just about every single thing that happens in the assembly, then I actually believe them. Madam Speaker, there is also, the assembly also cited an increase in the cost of insurance, mainly driven by factors within the insurance industry, and I'm happy that the committee did capture this particular need of an additional allocation of about 30 million shillings on insurance costs in Nairobi. Madam Speaker, therefore, whereas we support the ceilings, we wish that we had done better as a Senate on the division of revenue. But let me conclude by speaking to something that the Senator for Kitui also alluded to on the question of late disbursements. It has become the song in every meeting we have at the Public Accounts Committee with county assemblies, with the county governments themselves, that in fact it looks like it is a pointless exercise for us to allocate these resources to counties, yet they actually never receive those resources, and when they receive them so late that all they do is when the money comes, it goes to payment of outstanding bills. Madam Speaker, we have had a conversation with people from Treasury, and we have asked the question, does the current National Treasury understand that it is not a national government treasury, but it is a national treasury? And you can see open bias in the manner in which these 2 levels of governments are actually financed. When we had a conversation or a meeting with the CS Treasury and his PS, I think as of the beginning of May, 2 months to the close of the financial year, about 90 billion out of the 370 billion that we had allocated to the counties in the last financial year was still undisbursed. Such a huge percentage of it, of the total allocation, is still pending. When you compare that to the 2 trillion that had been allocated to the national government, only about 20 billion was remaining, which tells you that when money hits our treasury and somebody is sitting there and saying, what are the priorities we have as a national treasury, they never consider counties as a priority. And that is the reason why we are saying we need a review. Maybe we need to even change the name Instead of this treasury being called a national treasury, let us call it Kenya's treasury, so that these people don't get it in their head that they don't exist to serve the whims of the national government, but that in fact these two levels of government, after we have determined the equitable share, then when money comes in, no one arm of government should have priority over the other in terms of disbursement of those resources. Therefore, Madam Speaker, I rise to support. I hope that we can do better next year. I have seen county governments, the COG complaining that in fact their recurrent ceilings have actually been lowered in this particular financial year. I am sure the Chair of Finance and Budget has explained to them, and great explanations are going to come from them. But for me, I wish that we do more in terms of growing the basket of devolution, so that we don't have these conversations every time that there are constrictions of resources for the devolution functions. I thank you, Madam Speaker.
Senator Oburu.
Thank you, Madam Speaker, for the opportunity. Madam Speaker, I don't want to say much on this bill, but I think it is one of the most important bills that should be discussed by this Senate. And Madam Speaker, I'm not very happy that the Senate is not full. But Madam Speaker, having said that, I would like to dissuade my colleagues in the Senate from the notion that there was an increment in allocation to the counties from 370 billion to 385. Madam Speaker, there is money in real terms and there is money in nominal terms. Madam Speaker, when you talk of money in real terms, you must look at the value, what is called net present value of money. And that is money minus inflation. Even if you don't want to increase, at least increase to the extent that you cover the inflationary trends in the country. Madam Speaker, the 15 billion which was increased, which we increased and passed here to 385 billion from 370, was only 4% increment of the budget. And yet the inflation was standing at about 9.2%. That is the projected inflation. And Madam Speaker, that means that there was a difference of about 5%. And that difference of 5% translates to more than 20 billion, which means that in actual sense, you reduced the allocation to the counties by more than 20 billion shillings, which means from 370, it must have gone down to less than 350 billion in terms of the real terms of money, instead of just the nominal. Madam Speaker, whereas that is a gone conclusion, that is something we are not debating now because it was already passed. Madam Speaker, I would like to speak to delayed disbursement. Madam Speaker, when you delay disbursement to the counties, it means that the national government is giving very little priorities to the county government. Madam Speaker, it was contemplated, and I don't know why it is not explicitly stated, that every shilling collected, the share of the county must be set aside. Every shilling collected, it should not be the discretion of the national government to decide when to pay the counties and when not. They should deduct the portion of the county and put aside and remain with theirs, which is very huge. And they can play with that one as much as they like, but not gamble with the one for the counties, Madam Speaker. Madam Speaker, gambling with this money for the counties is making government services very, very expensive. Madam Speaker, in the counties, a lot of people, credible business people, have stopped doing business with the counties, Madam Speaker. Madam Speaker, they have stopped doing business with the counties because counties don't pay. Sometimes it takes very long for the monies to be paid. And Madam Speaker, you find some of the small businesses have actually gone bankrupt because the counties are unable to pay them and they don't have enough capital to continue, and the banks also cannot support them. Some of them have actually been bankrupted by the banks because of lack of payment of funds. And some of these lack of payments are due to non-release or disbursement of money by the national government. Madam Speaker, I therefore think that this is something which we need to, if need be, the Senate must find a way of compelling the government to make sure that the national government disburses the necessary funds to the counties, either by setting it aside from every shilling collected and making sure that the counties get their fair share. Madam Speaker, I also want to speak to the own source collections. Madam Speaker, this own source collection is an area which needs to be strengthened, and counties need to be strengthened so that they can collect more money in terms of own source. Madam Speaker, this is an area where there has been a lot of corruption. Madam Speaker, I'm not speaking about a particular county, but I know that generally this is an area where there are a lot of loopholes, where more than 50% of the collections go to the pockets of individuals who collect this money. And it is an area where a lot of effort need to be put so that these loopholes are plugged and the counties have sufficient money to operate even when the national government does not disburse money as it is at the present. Madam Speaker, I also want to speak to the holding of certain functions which were by the Constitution devolved. Madam Speaker, these functions were devolved by the Constitution, but 10 years down the line, these functions are still being performed by the national government. The resources for these functions are being retained by the national government. Madam Speaker, this is a very, very serious issue because these people are violating the provisions of the Constitution. If they say that it is because the counties have not developed the capacity to handle some of these functions, the capacity was supposed to be developed with the assistance of the national government. It was the national government to assist counties to develop those capacities so that they can effectively handle those functions. And 10 years down the line, Madam Speaker, I cannot believe that for instance, the Ministry of Infrastructure, Roads, and so on, are still holding on to Kura and Kera. These are obviously devolved functions, Madam Speaker, because Kura is the one dealing with those roads in the towns and in the urban areas and the municipalities. And why they should be retained here, Madam Speaker, I know it is for reasons of corruption. There are people who know that when they hold those funds, then they have some leverage to get some benefits from them, and therefore they don't want to let go, and these functions continue, and even Kera, Madam Speaker. These are just two examples, Madam Speaker, but there are several, particularly health. They have quite a lot of functions which they are still holding on to, including funds to the counties, Madam Speaker. And I believe that this needs to be released. Madam Speaker, my county is being given some paltry increment, and this is because we, of course, did not do a very good job in allocating more money to the counties. But I hope that in the next allocation, our assembly will be more alert to the fact that we need to defend devolution. We need not come here to defend the national governments, and we need to allocate more money to our counties. Madam Speaker, lastly, I would like to speak to the holding of funds for the National Assembly by the county executives. Madam Speaker, the county assemblies need to have a clear line for their own funds to be allocated to them. This dependence on the executive is making them subservient and more, and even more, I mean, to speak more bluntly, I think it is disabling them from oversighting the counties effectively. Madam Speaker, I think as a Senate, we should think of a way of creating clear budget lines for the assemblies and for the executives. Madam Speaker, also from experience, I know that the county assemblies are better paymasters to their suppliers than the county executives. Madam Speaker, I don't know the reasons, but I think it is a high time we consider separating the budgets of the county assemblies from those of the county executives, so that the counties can more effectively oversight the county executives without depending on them for allocation of funds. Madam Speaker, I think I would like to, with those few remarks, I would like to support this bill, and on behalf of my county, I hope that these remarks will be taken seriously in the next allocation for counties. Thank you, Madam Speaker.
Senator Veronica.
Madam Speaker, thank you for this opportunity. I rise to support the bill that is being debated, Madam Speaker. And Madam Speaker, as the bill is clear, it's a horizontal allocation of resources to the county, to the counties, the 47 counties, Madam Speaker. I specifically note Section 6 of the County Allocation of Revenue Bill, which has now clearly laid out certain parameters and steps which will be observed for any functions that may be transferred to the national government pursuant to Article 187 of the Constitution from the county governments, Madam Speaker. I have specifically remembered the incidents where functions from Nairobi County were transferred to the national government in the previous regime. And the reading of Section 6 of this County Allocation of Revenue Bill now gives me a lot of comfort in terms of the level of transparency that has now been thrown into such a transfer by Section 6 of this County Allocation of Revenue Bill 2023, that, Madam Speaker, there will now be clear reports that are given by the Auditor General not later than 3 months after the end of each financial year, preparing a special audit report on the financial and non-financial performance of an entity to which a county government function has been transferred so that we can have higher levels of accountability, Madam Speaker, when it comes to functions being moved from one level of government to the other level. Madam Speaker, if you will recall, Nairobi County has the highest allocation of resources, and this level of accountability, Madam Speaker, then secures any transfer of functions so that we do not have any mischief being ran by any levels of government when such a transfer of function has been done, Madam Speaker. So I rise to support this bill and to also say that this level of accountability should also run even after the horizontal allocation of resources across the counties, Madam Speaker. It is one thing for resources to be transferred to counties. It's another thing how those resources are expended by the counties, Madam Speaker. And while the counties may be crying for more resources, counties need to be encouraged, Madam Speaker, that if any funds are transferred for specific functions that are being run and managed by those counties, then we need to see as leaders and as wananchi in Kenya that those resources are being utilized in a diligent manner and in a very accountable fashion, Madam Speaker, so that counties will not just be asking for more additional resources, while in actual fact, those resources are disappearing through corrupt means or corrupt ways of those resources being managed at the county level. So the challenge goes not just to the national government, but also to the county governments, Madam Speaker. If you look at the kind of resources that are being sent to the counties, even the 385 billion, Madam Speaker, if it was utilized well, we would have such results in this country that we would show for a fact, Madam Speaker, that these resources are properly utilized and that the citizens are able to benefit. Citizens within counties are able to benefit from resources that have been allocated to counties, Madam Speaker. Then there is also the aspect of their own source revenue from the counties. It is high time counties became more innovative on how to earn their own resources as opposed to waiting a whole year to pass, Madam Speaker, and then crying out for allocation of resources from the national government, Madam Speaker. We must look for ways of sustainability within the counties so that counties can actually run their governments and run their budgets in a manner that is credible to the people who are paying the taxes at the local level, Madam Speaker. And I would want to refer to one of the counties we found in the United States of America, Miami-Dade County, where we found they even have excess revenue because of their own source revenue. And I know somebody may quickly quip and say, don't bring us the American experience here. Yes, we will look at the experiences of counties or places which are successful so that we can take the best practice from those jurisdictions, Madam Speaker. So I would urge that county governments continue to be diligent in management of resources, and the same way, Madam Speaker, that leaders are able to manage their own resources in a manner which is credible, believable, and transparent. Let the same ideals and the same principles be transferred to public offices so that we can credibly account to the whole nation and to the people in our counties of how resources are being managed. And with that, Madam Speaker, I support this bill. Thank you.
Senator Ledama.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. Madam Speaker, I rise to support this very, very important bill in its amended version. Madam Speaker, although I support the bill, sometimes I'm baffled as to why we sit here, we debate both the vertical and the horizontal bills in terms of how the funds are divided and sent to the counties or between the two arms of government. Then the money and the Constitution is quite clear that it's supposed to be sent to counties. The Constitution says that money shall not be delayed or reduced at all. It has to be sent immediately. So I pose the question. We're here, all of us are here supporting this bill. so that our counties can be able to get money. But do we ever ask questions as to why we should not penalize Treasury for delaying the disbursement of money into counties? A couple of weeks ago, Madam Speaker, we invited the Cabinet Secretary in charge of Treasury to explain to us why he's violating the Constitution when it comes to the issue of disbursement. You know, I'm happy that this Senate is taking its work seriously. We are passing on legislation, but I think it's about time that we should have a conversation of how we can be able to safeguard the money that is supposed to go to our counties. You know, CRA is doing a fantastic job, and I'm happy with the steps they're making, but they have to be consistent. I've noted, Madam Speaker, that the ceilings for the executives of most counties, particularly my Narrow County, has gone down from the previous year's ceiling. And when I inquired from the committee indicated that these are counties' staff establishment. There are few things that have changed. They have been able to share with CRA, and CRA realized that earlier on they had overestimated their ceilings, budgets, and now they have come down. I've also been made to understand that the CCs will no longer be drawing money from the executive budget. They'll be drawing money from their line ministries or department. Madam Speaker, I think as we debate this, and we know counties are up in arms saying, you know, we would like to be given money for this, we would like to be given money for this. I think it's important that we explain to the counties that there are few things that have happened. For instance, the salaries for the governor and the deputy governor has been adjusted downwards. It is important for them to be able to know that under full disclosure. Number two, when they realize that their ceilings have been reduced, it is important for them to realize that it is not the Senate that reduced the ceiling, for instance, of Narrow County Executive from 607 million in the previous financial year of 2022-2023 to 545,667,287 in the financial year 23-24. For Nairobi County is the one which is heavily been affected. Before, their ceiling for the executive was 816 million. Now, for this financial year, it has gone down to 640. We might get daggers being thrown at the Senate by the county government saying that we have reduced their ceiling for the executive, but it is imperative for the county governors to know that CRA relied on the information that they submitted on verifiable staff establishment. So, Madam Speaker, as we debate this bill, I think the biggest question for us to ask ourselves now is that what are we going to do to ensure that at least these counties get their money and their money on time? I don't believe, Madam Speaker, that any county should have anything to do with pending bills. I think it behooves this House to be able to build the capacity. And I'm happy that ceilings for county assemblies have gone up, to build the capacities for the county government so that they can budget for the money that they have. Most counties have this very bad habit, and I think they're copying it from the national government, that you pass a budget, but before the financial year is over, you've carried out about 4 or 5 supplementary budgets. I think it's about time for us to become realistic and to realize that the money that we have is the only money that we'll have in that financial year. One thing that I'm always very happy, Madam Speaker, and it's good for me to share with our new colleagues in this parliament, is that the last parliament played a critical role in ensuring that money which is being sent to county governments will never go down. It will always go up. Although this year, the money going to counties actually dropped down because of the inflation in the country, at least we tried to some extent to make sure that it doesn't go down below 370 billion. I hope, Madam Speaker, that in a couple of years when we'll be reviewing the formula, which is relied by CRA to be able to disperse the money, because I know at this point they are looking at different, and Madam Speaker, you'll allow me to grab my notes. They are looking at different parameters, given that they have taken basic equal share to be about 20%, population index to be about 18%, land area index 8%, agricultural index 10%, health index 17%, road access index 8%, urban index 5%, and poverty index. I hope that now, Madam Speaker, instead of just relying on this, we can go back to the earlier school of thought of putting a 2% incentive for accountability. I've noted with great concern, Madam Speaker, and I don't know why the committee did this, that the committee noted, and they never checked this with CRA, that now, for instance, the audit committee meetings have been reduced to 4 meetings. That has got 2 consequences. One, which is a direct consequence to the auditors, the internal auditors in the county, and another one is unintended consequences, whereby in counties, the issue of accountability will be something which would be left for the auditors now to come out and point out and say, you should have done A, B, C, D, because the internal auditors will not have enough money to be able to sit in and audit the accounts of the county to help that county maintain accountability. So I think we need to ask ourselves, are we just sending money because of, of population, because of poverty index, because of roads access index, or are we also following this money to ensure that this money is actually utilized effectively? Today, Madam Speaker, if you look at all the 47 counties, there is not a single county that doesn't have pending bills. And you ask yourself, why do these counties have these pending bills? The counties have pending bills because of these bloated budgets. Narok County is receiving 9.1 billion, which is slightly above what it received in the last financial year, of around 8.8 billion. But now, I think for us, and where we need to sit down with this county assembly, is to ensure that they only, first of all, budget for that 9.1 billion, they remove the recurrent expenditures and the development expenditure, and then now they shift all their burden into the on-source revenue game. We have a huge capacity and capability of raising more money, but the problem is we do not like to build systems which enhance accountability. If you build systems that are clearly defined by our spatial plans, by our on-source revenue streams, Madam Speaker, our counties will not be crying. Our counties will not be saying we are shutting down because money is not coming. They will be relying on the on-source revenue. So I think, Madam Speaker, this Senate today ought to start considering these on-source systems that can be able to ensure us, so that when I sit in this desk, I can go into my phone and I can say, how much is Narok County collecting today? But you will find that most county governors will not want that. In fact, Madam Speaker, when the Controller of Budget attempts to get information about how money is being spent in the county government, the county governors go up in arms. They say, no, you are trying to control us. We are not trying to control you. All we are calling for is accountability. So, Madam Speaker, this money, although it's a very minimal increase from the previous financial year, I do hope, Madam Speaker, that the money will actually go to counties. I do hope, Madam Speaker, that these county governors, and I'm happy that we had so many senators who ended up becoming governors, I hope that they will only budget for what they receive. Although the budget process has got to come in fast, but I hope that they can budget for the money they know that they'll be able to receive and only commit to those expenditures. Finally, Madam Speaker, I want to call upon the county governments to work closely with the Commission of Revenue Allocation, work closely with the assemblies, now that I've noted that most assemblies have got their budget ceilings increased, They work closely with the Council of Governors and closely with Treasury, so that eventually, after the end of this parliament, county assemblies will have their financial autonomy. The only time that county assemblies would be able to oversight county governments is when they have their financial autonomy. But the moment they continue relying on county governors, they will all continue singing this song of saying, we want ward development fund, just like the way we sing here in this Senate. We want our Senate oversight fund. We forget our primary job, which is oversight. So, which is legislative. So, Madam Speaker, I thank you for that, and I hope that we are not just talking here, that Treasury will prioritize. Will prioritize the money that is supposed to go to counties. And maybe before I sit down, Madam Speaker, something else that just crossed my mind. Now that we have the consolidated fund, why can't we now start thinking about amending the PFM Act and then having a big kitty and dividing all the money that we get into three? So we have a fund where we put all the money that will go to county governments, the other fund where the consolidated fund, and also the parliament kitty. So that in parliament, we don't have to keep on relying on the exchequer releases. In fact, the Treasury, even if they want to release the money, will just look at our accounts and say, okay, they have money in their accounts. Let me release to them. Narrow County or Kajiado County, whichever other county, how much money is in the entire overall kitty for counties, and how much of that overall kitty is your share, so that counties can be able to get their money. Otherwise, Madam Speaker, I thank you.
Senator Mwaruma.
Asante Mheshimiwa Spika kwa hii fursa umenipa ili kuchangia huu mswada muhimu sana katika bunge ya Seneti, mswada wa County Allocation of Revenue Act ama KARA. Mheshimiwa Spika, mwaka wa 2010 kama Wakenya tulijipa katiba mpya ambayo ilileta mfumo wa uongozi kwa ngazi mbili, ngazi ya kitaifa ama national government na ngazi za county ama magatuzi. Mheshimiwa Spika, wakati katiba mpya ilipita mwaka 2010, katika ile katiba kuna consolidated fund ama hazina ya kitaifa ambayo ilibuniwa kutokana na hiyo katiba. Mheshimiwa Spika, wale ambao ama ile tume ambayo inafaa kuhusika kugawanya hizi pesa mara mbili kwa serikali ya kitaifa na serikali ya county ni Commission for Revenue Allocation ama CRA. CRA wakishapitisha huo mfumo wa kugawanya pesa kwa serikali ya kitaifa na serikali ya county kwa sheria inayoitwa DORA, hawa wa Kenya walisema kwamba ni vizuri kuwe na wawakilishi ama wabunge wa bunge la kitaifa na bunge la seneti ili kupiga msasa hiyo sheria. Mheshimiwa Spika, wiki kadhaa zimepita wakati tumepitisha sheria ya DORA, na baada ya kugawanya hii pesa mara mbili, hii pesa ya kwenda kwa magatuzi pia inagawanywa mara 47 kwa sababu magatuzi ni 47, na sheria inayotumika kugawanya hizi pesa ama rasilimali ya kitaifa mara 47 ni sheria ya County Allocation of Revenue Act ambayo ndo tunajadili leo. Mheshimiwa Speaker, hii sheria kupita inahitaji pia formula ama mfumo wa kugawanya hizi pesa. Nakumbuka mwaka wa 2020 kulikuwa na patashika na vuta nikuvute kati ya maseneta na executive kwa sababu ya ule mfumo ambao ulikuja na kaunti zingine zilikuwa zinapoteza pesa. Tulingangana na tukakubaliana kwamba tutumie formula ya pili ama mfumo wa pili wa kugawanya pesa. Na hii leo naona ya kwamba katika hii sheria ya DORA kupeleka bilioni 385.4 kwa magatuzi. Na kati ya hizi pesa, Mheshimiwa Speaker, asilimia 14.5 ama bilioni 35.9 zimeenda kwa county assemblies. Mheshimiwa Speaker, bila kuongea sana, undani wa ile bill ya kara, ningependa kusema kwamba magatuzi ni mfumo wa serikali ambao ni mpya kidogo. Umeenda miaka 13 peke yake, lakini umekumbwa na changamoto si haba. Na nafikiri katika kuongea kwangu ama kuchangia huu mjadala, ni vyema basi niangalie zile changamoto ambazo zimekumba serikali zetu za ugatuzi. Changamoto ni nyingi, na ya kwanza kabisa, Mheshimiwa Spika, ambayo inafanya ugatuzi usielee ama usinawiri, ya kwanza kabisa ni changamoto ya kucheleweshwa kutolewa kwa mgao kwa magatuzi. Kama tukiangalia saizi, serikali za magatuzi zinadai pesa nyingi sana za mwaka 2022 na 2023 ambao unaisha huu mwezi, Mheshimiwa Spika. Na hata hizi pesa saizi zikiachiliwa na hazina ya kitaifa ama treasury, bado kutakuwa hakuna muda wa magavana kutumia hizi fedha. Mheshimiwa Spika, kuchelewesha kwa mgao wa pesa kwa magatuzi kunapelekea kuwa na huduma duni katika magatuzi. Ya kwanza, kwa sababu kwa mfano hospitali hazina madawa. Hospitali nyingi saizi hazina madawa, hazina vifaa vya kutibu, na wale pia wafanyikazi katika ugatuzi hawajalipwa. Madaktari hawajalipwa, walimu hawajalipwa, na huduma zitakuwa duni kwa sababu wale watu hawana motisha. Huwezi kuniambia, Mheshimiwa Spika, kwamba wewe ni daktari na hujalipwa mshahara na ufanye kazi ukiwa na motisha. Wengi motisha wao umekuwa chini, na hata kama wangekuwa na motisha, Mheshimiwa Spika, kama hakuna dawa na vifaa vya kufanya kazi kule hospitalini, basi huduma zinakuwa ni duni kabisa. Mheshimiwa Spika, pia changamoto ambayo tumeona, na nafikiri mkuu wa walio wengi Senator Cheriot aliangazia vizuri sana, akisema kwamba tumepeleka pesa kwa magatuzi, lakini shida imekuwa ni kuajiri watu wengi kushinda kile kiwango ambacho kimewekwa na sheria. Sheria imesema ya kwamba 35% ya ile pesa yote ambayo inaenda kwa magatuzi itumike kwa uajiri, lakini kaunti nyingi za Kenya zimeajiri watu na wakapita kiasi. Wametumia 40%, 50%. Kama gatuzi langu la Taita Taveta tuko kwa 52% ya ile fedha ambayo inaenda kwa gatuzi letu inatumika kuajiri watu. Na kama tunahitaji kufanya maendeleo, na kile kiwango cha pesa kilichowekwa ni 35% au zaidi, unaona Mheshimiwa Spika kwamba ile pesa inayobakia labda ya operations inakuwa kama 10% peke yake. Kwa hivyo nafikiri ni vizuri kama Seneti tuhimize magatuzi yetu na tuyalazimishe kufata sheria ya kuajiri, ili siwe fedha yote ambayo imeenda kwa magatuzi inatumika kuajiri peke yake na maendeleo yanakuwa duni. Mheshimiwa Spika, la tatu, Mheshimiwa Spika, ni ufisadi ambao umekuwa donda ndugu katika magatuzi. Magatuzi mengi saizi, Mheshimiwa Spika, ukiangalia ile thamani ya pesa ambayo inaenda kwa magatuzi haionekani, kwa sababu ile miradi ambayo inafanywa na magatuzi unapata ya kwamba bei yake imekuwa ya juu sana kupita kiasi. Nilikuwa najaribu, Mheshimiwa Spika, kufananisha ile pesa kwa mfano ya kujenga darasa kwa mgao wa constituency ama CDF. Unaweza pata darasa linajengwa na 1.2 lakini madarasa mengi ambayo yanajengwa na serikali za magatuzi ni kama 2.5. Na unashangaa makontrakta ni wale wale, wakandarasi ni wale wale. Kwa nini serikali za magatuzi zinatumia pesa nyingi zaidi kufanya hizo kandarasi? Ni kwa sababu wao pia katika kufanya bajeti ya miradi wameweka pia pesa ya ufisadi. Mheshimiwa Spika, donda ndugu lingine ambalo liko katika county katika uajiri ni kwamba kuna watu wengi ambao wanalipwa kule ndani ambao ni wafanyikazi hewa ama ghost workers, na nafikiri ni vizuri kama seneti ambao tunafanya secondary oversight tujaribu kuangazia na kutafuta mbinu ambazo zitakomesha huu ufisadi. Mheshimiwa Spika, shida nyingine ambayo tumepata katika magatuzi ni kwamba kuna magatuzi ama maeneo mengine ya magatuzi katika gatuzi moja ambayo yanabaguliwa kimaendeleo. Unaweza ona kama gatuzi langu la Taita Taveta, labda kuna maeneo ambayo gavana anatoka ama ambayo yalimpatia support gavana, na yale mengine ambayo hayaku msaidia gavana labda kuingia kwa kiti, unapata yale maeneo yanatengwa kimaendeleo. Kwa hivyo Mheshimiwa Spika, pia ni vizuri counties ziangalie kupitisha sheria ambayo itakuwa na hakikisho ya kwamba kila maeneo ya gatuzi yanapata maendeleo bila mengine kuachwa nyuma. Katika mswada wa BBI, Mheshimiwa Spika, tulikuwa tumepitisha ya kwamba ama kama BBI ingepita, tulisema kuwe na ward equalization fund ama ward development fund ama sheria ya kuhakikisha kwamba kila wadi imepata pesa za kutosha ama zinayowiana na zingine kwa sababu ya maendeleo. Hii ni kuangalia ya kwamba hakuna eneo lolote katika gatuzi limeachwa nyuma. Kuna maeneo mengine ya magatuzi ama gatuzi zingine nchini ambazo wamepitisha tayari sheria ya ward development fund ili kuhakikisha kwamba ule mgao ukiingia katika kikapu cha county, kila ward inapata pesa yake ya maendeleo na hakuna ward yote ambayo inatengwa Mheshimiwa Spika kimaendeleo. Changamoto nyingine ni malipo duni ya wawakilishi wa wadi ama MCAs. Na nashukuru ndugu yangu seneta wa Nandi, Senator Cherargei, kwa kuleta ombi ama statement hapa ya kupeana nafasi ya hili bunge la seneti kuangazia mambo ya malipo na marupurupu ya wawakilishi bunge. Mheshimiwa Spika, huwezi niambia kwamba unafanya kazi na unalipwa 80,000 kwa mwezi na unatakikana kuandika sheria, kufanya utafiti na kusoma kiundani na kufanya oversight ama uangalizi na unalipwa 80,000. Nafikiri kama seneti hili swala la mshahara na malipo ya marupurupu ya wawakilishi bunge ni swala ambalo linafaa tuliangazie kwa undani. Na Mheshimiwa Spika, ni jambo la kuhuzunisha kwa sababu wale mawaziri wa county na sio eti wana sifa zaidi ama qualification zaidi ya wale MCAs, wao wanapata 400,000. Na hata kama kungekuwa na tofauti ya mshahara, labda hawa wawakilishi wadi wangeanzia kama 200,000 kwenda juu. Na uwezi niambia Mheshimiwa Spika kwamba unaweza fanya uangalizi ama oversight na unalipwa 80,000 na huku unaangalia bilioni 5. Lazima kuna vile ukifuatwa vizuri na gavana unaweza wekwa kwa mfuko, na wawakilishi wadi wengi Kenya wamewekwa kwa mfuko na magavana, hawawezi kupumua, hawana sauti, na wizi unaendelea katika magatuzi yetu na wawakilishi wadi hawaongei. Kwa hivyo Mheshimiwa Spika, hilo ni swala lingine ambalo limepelekea ugatuzi kutonawiri. Mheshimiwa Spika, swala lingine ambalo tumeongea katika hii nyumba ni swala la inflation ama mfumuko wa bei. Nafikiri Senator wa Siaya aliangazia hili jambo akisema ya kwamba ile pesa tunapeleka kwa magatuzi haifanani na mfumuko wa bei na vile gharama ya maisha imepanda. Ukiangalia Mheshimiwa Spika, katika ile sheria ya Dora ambayo tulikuwa tumepata mapendekezo kutoka kwa CRA, ilikuwa inasemekana kwamba mfumuko wa bei ama inflation ilikuwa 8%. Kwa hivyo ilikuwa inatakikana pesa ya kwenda kwa magatuzi iwe bilioni 407 ili kuangazia mambo ya mfumuko wa bei, lakini tumepeleka bilioni 385. Kwa hivyo ile pesa ambayo tumepeleka kule haijawiana na mfumuko wa bei. Na Mheshimiwa Spika, kama kuna bajeti imefanywa labda mwanzoni mwa huu mwaka ya kujenga kwa mfano darasa, wakati bei ya chuma ni shilingi 2,000, kama saizi bei ya chuma imefika shilingi 2,500 na katika ile pesa tunapeleka kule hatujaangazia huo mfumuko ama hiyo inflation, basi kutakuwa na miradi michache zaidi ambayo itafanyika. Kwa hivyo Mheshimiwa Spika, nafikiri tungekubaliana wakati mwingine tukiangalia sheria ya dola ama kuangazia zile pesa ambazo zitaenda kwa magatuzi, tusikize wale wataalam wa CRA vile wanavyosema na vile wamefanya mahesabu kulingana na mfumuko wa bei na kadhalika. Na Mheshimiwa Spika, jambo lingine ambalo ningependa kuangazia ni kwamba baada ya kupitisha hii sheria ya kara kule mashinani pia kwa counties nao wanafanya bajeti yao kulingana na ile pesa ambao tumepitisha huku ya kila gatuzi, na pia wanaangalia ile pesa ama makusanyo ya county ama on source revenue. Mheshimiwa Spika, kuna wazimu ambao unaendelea katika magatuzi yetu. Unapata ya kwamba kufanya biashara katika counties imekuwa ngumu sana kwa sababu wanapeana permits ama vibali vya kufanya biashara vimekuwa juu sana. Kijana mdogo ambaye anaanza biashara, kama utamwambia anaanza duka na unamlipisha 40,000 kwa mwaka kwa sababu unataka kuongeza hiyo on source revenue. Hawa vijana wetu ama kina mama na kadhalika hawawezi kufanya biashara kwa sababu inagharimu sana. Ile pesa ambayo inaenda kwa magatuzi ni nyingi sana kama business permits. Nilikuwa naangalia katika masoko yetu ama finance bill ya 2022-2023 kule Taita Taveta, unapata wakati mama wa soko ameleta gunia ya sukuma analipishwa ada ya shilingi 30, lakini pia wakati anaingia chooni analipishwa ada ya shilingi 10. Na nikawa nauliza, jameni, si mtamaliza hawa kina mama? Kwa sababu hii ada amelipa ya shilingi 30, hiyo ni service charge ama ni ya kutoa huduma za choo, huduma za security, huduma ya maji kama anauza maembe ama sukuma apate kuosha. Wakati unamfanya alipe shilingi 30 na zingine tena za choo, hiyo ni kufanya mtu alipe ushuru mara mbili, kwa kizungu double taxation. Kwa hivyo huo azimu wa on source revenue ama pesa ya makusanyo katika county imepelekea biashara nyingi zimekufa. Na Mheshimiwa Spika, ni vizuri niseme pia kwamba katika hii finance bill ambayo inakuja katika serikali ya kitaifa pia itapelekea biashara nyingi kuharibika. Maana yule mama mboga ambaye anakusanya 1,500 kwa mwaka, na yeye pia ataingia katika kutoza ushuru ama tax bracket kulingana na hii finance bill ikipita. Mheshimiwa Spika, mtu yeyote ambaye anakusanya shilingi 1,300, shilingi 100 na 1,390 kulingana na hii finance bill kwa siku ama 500 kwa mwaka atalipa ushuru. Na hao mama mboga, boda na wale watu maskini ambao hii serikali ya Kenya Kwanza ilisema itawalinda. Sasa hii finance bill ikipita, Mheshimiwa Spika, itaenda kuwafinyilia, na huu mfumo wa bottom up unataka ama umepelekea kufinya wale watu wa chini hii finance bill ikipita. Ndio maana kwa kumalizia niseme kwamba huu mswada wa finance bill hautakuja kwa Senate, uko kwa National Assembly, lakini kama viongozi na kama Senate ambao tunawakilisha county zetu, ni vizuri tupinge kwa kinywa na sauti yetu isikike kwamba hatutaki hii finance bill ipite kwa sababu inaenda kugandamiza mama mboga, inaenda kugandamiza wale watu wa chini. Nashukuru sana kwa muda, Mheshimiwa Spika.
Senator Cherarke.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. I concur with what my colleagues have stated on this, the County Allocation of Revenue Bill 2023. Madam Speaker, as you are aware, this is just what we call the budgetary cycle process. And I think we need to thank the Supreme Court, because when the start of this Senate, the National Assembly thought that we should not be part of any budgetary making process. But these are the fruits and the growth of devolution that continues. So, Madam Speaker, sorry, I want to say that some of us have mixed feelings about money going to counties. Madam Speaker, as you are aware, and I want to put the record straight, I have seen my colleagues, for the convenience of microphones and media, and to excite public, they have made very serious assertions that we did slash money that was going to counties. Contrary there is an increment, and in the hindsight of institutional memory, Madam Speaker, in 2022-2023 financial year, after protracted third basis, the formula that we used, we allocated counties in this financial year 370 billion. Madam Speaker, we have pushed the increment to 385.3 billion. This shows the commitment of Kenya Kwanza and the President, His Excellency, in protecting and nurturing and growing devolution. So the public and Kenyans should be aware, against all our political leanings, that there is a total increment going to counties of 15.3 billion additional. And we want to thank the government for that, Madam Speaker. Madam Speaker, it is unfortunate, and I've heard in other news, very senior leaders telling the government, don't tax. Then asking the government, why are you not paying judges? Why are you not paying wazee? Why are you not, the government projects are stalling? There is only two options, Madam Speaker. As we talk, Kenya public debt is approaching 10 trillion Kenya shillings. There are only two options. Either we borrow more, which is not tenable, or we tax and see loopholes and leakages of taxation. And I have seen the former Prime Minister say the same thing that we are saying, that make sure you ensure there is tax expenses and there is no government wastages. Madam Speaker, that is why the Finance Bill 2023 should pass as is, without changing a comma. Because, Madam Speaker, the reasons are following. One, Madam Speaker, the Finance Bill 2023, there are no new taxes. I want Kenyans to get this straight. There are no new taxes that have been introduced in the Finance Bill 2023. Madam Speaker, when you talk about financing housing levy fund, for example, Madam Speaker, we are saying give 3%, and we are capping at 2,500 Kenya shillings. The employer gives 3%, you give 3% to match. And we are saying these are saving. After 7 years, Madam Speaker, you can get back your money, Madam Speaker. Madam Speaker, the reason I'm saying this is under Article 43 on economic and social rights. I've seen people saying government does not have business in building houses. But the people will quickly saying, they will be accusing government and tell Madam Speaker, as they are aware of the Constitution, that government needs to submit the report on implementation of human rights situation in the country. Part of human rights is right to shelter, food, clothing, education, health. And it is captured, Madam Speaker, in the Constitution. So any leader who says that government does not have business in building houses, I think it is very unfortunate, because more than, and I want to repeat on the floor of the House, more than 5.6 million Kenyans live in slums. Even where I come from, Nandi, Kapsabet, there are slums. Even a small town like Imaki, there is a slum called Kibra there. It doesn't mean that we want to pass this finance bill as is. And therefore, I think, I know, Madam Speaker, all of us are excited to, I don't have a problem with the minority side, including my brother, Senator Mwaruma. They have a right to oppose. But they should allow the government to fix the mess that he was on the other side. I remember during the handshake, and Senator Mwaruma was leading in the choir. In fact, I remember when the finance bill was being passed, there was tyranny of numbers, and Senator Otsosi at that time was a diligent member and supporter of finance bill in the National Assembly, Madam Speaker. And therefore, we need to be honest. Where do you want Senator Ali Robert to raise this money? I normally see, Madam Speaker, I was shocked over the weekend. I saw a very respectable member where we serve in the board of the circle of Bunge, telling the people we want to secede. Then before closing the comment, he tells the Deputy President we need roads. So what are you saying? Madam Speaker, as a country, we must speak truth not only to power, but to ourselves and accept the reality. Madam Speaker, in quick succession, because I have 4 points. So I want to confirm, I've seen people saying if the finance bill passes in the parliament, we shall do the wider public assembly. Why are you disturbing Kenyans? Article 1 gives us power to exercise the sovereignty and the power indirectly. Kenyans voted last year. Why would you want to go and disturb Kenyans, Madam Speaker? Yet we have voted You are there by right as the speaker. Why would somebody imagine that you cannot preside the house and therefore go outside there and make noise, yet we were elected to preside over? So, Chair, I want to confirm, and you know we have tremendous respect to the Chair of Finance and Budget. You know he's one of our principals in Kenya Kwanza and a party leader, and I can see he's excited about it, which is okay. So I want to confirm to the whole country, this finance bill shall pass. We will raise the revenue and confirm to the nation that the revenue that should be raised will be used in a prudent manner. The second point and final is that, Madam Speaker, I have mixed feelings, especially I have seen there is an increment to Nandi County, and this one will be my closing remarks. Madam Speaker, I have mixed feelings, because if you want to know where corruption is, the headquarters of corruption, lethargy, mismanagement of county resources is Nandi County under a governor by the name called Sang. Because, Madam Speaker, a few days ago, there are many women who have lost lives at Kapsabet County Referral Hospital giving birth. Why should a woman in this time and era die while giving birth? I thought it should be the other way, giving life. Madam Speaker, and it is sad that we are pushing to increase money to Nandi. Madam Speaker, I want to challenge the finance and budget so that we don't, I've heard we are making sweeping statements, all counties are corrupt, all counties are not functioning. I want us to come up, and I expected the Chair of Finance to listen to this, bring a policy or legal intervention to stop counties like Nandi County, who are perpetuating corruption, from receiving their allocation until they show prudent use. If Mandera is doing very well, let them get their money. If Mandera is doing very well, let them not be condemned because Nandi is perpetuating corruption. We must, as a Senate, bite the bullet, Madam Speaker. And you know the problem with the ACC and DPP, they are partners of crime. You report a misappropriation of funds in Nandi, they go and tell the governor, there is this issue, they see each other, you may attend, that is it. The people who reported are now the target of being hounded political witch hunt, and even witch hunt by the EACC and the DPP as opposed to the perpetrators. Madam Speaker, we should not allow, and therefore I want to condemn what is happening in Kapsabet County Referral Hospital and other hospitals, Madam Speaker. You will find our governor, Madam Speaker, and it is sad because Nandi, in the financial year, it cost 6.9 billion. We have increased to Nandi 7.3 billion. But you will find my governor changing himself on the runway tarmac of the JKIA, moving from the Etihad to Kenya Airways, from Kenya Airways, Emirates, from Emirates, Lufthansa, from Lufthansa, any other, even private, Madam Speaker, at the expense of what we are allocating, Madam Speaker. I feel so painful that 6.9 billion, we are increasing to 97.3 billion. There are no drugs in hospital, more than 196 facilities in Nandi. When you go to Maraba, you go to Kapsabet, you go to Mosoriat, you go to Kabiet, you go to Chepterwe, Madam Speaker. In fact, I am of the opinion that I have seen in your bill, Senator Roba, that even LT should go back to the national government, because counties cannot manage. In fact, I have appealed to the president that if other counties refuse to relinquish the LT function to the national government, I, as the senator of Nandi, I am requesting the president personally to take over the LT function for Nandi County. Because my people are dying, I am tired of burying them. I am tired of attending funeral services simply because of negligence of somebody who should be doing their job, Madam Speaker. And we have agreed, our governor, since he is serving second and final term, that he can just, we can just pay him salary and allow us to take these functions to national government for the president to assist us. Roads, Madam Speaker, you are our neighbor, and I know you have passed Nandi and you admire Nandi. We are not well. The roads are pathetic. We can't take our produce to the market. We can't take our milk. Can you believe our milk is getting expired before it reaches the market? Can you believe the maize? I see the issue of unga. My brother, Senator Utsosi, is my neighbor, but cannot access the unga. Yet I have unga because of pathetic road state, Madam Speaker. Even myself as the senator, I cannot access my home in Mosoriat in a Kapkeben village because even my road is in pathetic situation. So you can imagine if the road that goes to the senator's home is in pathetic, you can imagine the mama mboga and the border and the people who are at the bottom of the pyramid, Madam Speaker. Madam Speaker, the fifth question, and therefore I want to challenge, I didn't want to speak for other counties. We are allocating funds, but we need accountability. I want to challenge EACC. I have said, when even Governor Robert, Senator, now used to appear before me, I want to challenge EACC. Please, do your job. We cannot be appropriating money. And I want to, in fact, Madam Speaker, when you look under Article 219 of the Constitution of Kenya, if money has been appropriated by Parliament, and I hope the new CS Ndungu, because we censured the former CS Ukuri. Article 219, a county share of revenue raised by the national government shall be transferred to the county without undue delay and without deduction, except when the transfer has been stopped under Article 225. I want to call upon CS Ndungu, don't stop violating Article 219. It's very clear. Release the money to counties. Release money to Mandera, to Vihiga, and many others, Madam Speaker. Madam Speaker, with those very many remarks, I know this bill has a timeline, and I agree with the mover that we need to do revision as soon as next week Tuesday. But I hope, there are sections of the bill I don't agree with, Madam Speaker, and I hope the chair, when he will be doing the reply, especially on the transfer of functions, just one comment only, Chair, through the Speaker. We need to agree. Madam Speaker, can the Chair, as taking off notes, brief the House on how many transfers functions are yet to be given to counties, and how many costing, or how much that it should be due, Madam Speaker. Madam Speaker, in conclusion, I want to tell the people of Nandi, I'm increasing money from 6.9 billion to 7.9 billion. But we must sit down as a county and don't give a chance, an open check to our governor to continue plundering our resources. We are going as a Nandi, I want to say before the floor of the House, without fear of contradiction, we want to surrender all the functions to be assisted by the national government. We are suffering. Madam Speaker, I can even break down here, but as a man, in my culture, you don't cry in public. So, Madam Speaker, I'm restraining my emotions, Madam Speaker. This is a very serious matter. Madam Speaker, with those very remarks, I will consider my position, because it doesn't make sense to increase money to Nandi when there is nothing going on. When we'll be voting, I'll make my position known. With those very remarks, congratulate the Senator Roba and the committee. We wish you well. We hope you will lead us in many of those issues that we have raised. Thank you very much, Madam Speaker.
Senator Osotsi.
Thank you, Madam Speaker, for the opportunity to also say something about the county allocation of revenue bill that is before us, and to say that, Madam Speaker, I support the bill, but I have a number of issues I want to raise. First of all, on the issue of the ceilings. Madam Speaker, I have noticed that the ceilings for the county executives have been reduced, and those of the county assemblies have been increased. For my county, Madam Speaker, the ceiling for the county executive has been reduced by 100 million, from 588 million to 487 million. And the ceilings for the county assemblies have been increased from 637 to 714. Madam Speaker, the law requires, the Constitution, under Article 218(2), it requires that whenever we have a significant deviation, the explanation must be given in the bill. But the bill is silent on this significant deviation on the issue of ceilings. the reduction in the ceilings for the overall, for the county executive, I think is a very important issue that the committee needs to look at, because, Madam Speaker, you know the inflation rate has gone up. And if you look at the finance bill that my neighbor and friend Cheregei is supporting, the finance bill is proposing increases. And that is further going to affect the operations of the counties. And now this bill is proposing to reduce the ceilings for the county executive, which will really affect the operations of the county executive. So I think that required that under Article 218 2C, an explanation should have been given on this significant deviation. Madam Speaker, the schedule also does not indicate how much has been spent. The actual expenditure, it only indicates what is being proposed to be given, but is not indicating how much of this has been spent so far. I think it's important so that we know which particular county executives or county assemblies are violating the ceilings. That information is not provided here, and I think the committee should demand for that information so that Senate can begin to act on those county assemblies and county executives that violate the ceilings. And maybe the increase in the ceilings is suggesting that maybe the ceilings that we have given are not realistic. The issue of the legal services, Madam Speaker, I want to agree with the committee that counties should have their own legal departments so that these cases, some of them are handled internally. Whereas we agree that Kenyans have become very litigious, but it will be cheaper and more efficient if we had a legal unit within the counties so that some of these cases can be handled internally. We know counties are spending a lot of money on legal costs, and it has become a cash cow for people in the county attorney offices to make money using legal provision of legal services, getting their friends hired to represent counties, and they all went to school. They all went to the same law school, and they should be able to handle these cases without having to engage external lawyers to do it at a higher cost. The issue of staffing, Madam Speaker, has also been pointed out here. Some counties requested for more staff, but you see we have a capping at 100 employees. And I want to agree with the committee that CRA and County Assemblies Forum, they should engage so that to ensure that there is a review of the staffing levels within 6 months of tabling of this report. I think that will be very important because some county assemblies have overemployed people, and that affects the utilization of the funds that we give them. The issue of the committees, the numerous committees that we have in the county assembly, I think we need to cap them. The guidelines require that the maximum number of committees should be 14. And I want to agree with the committee that if you want to allow them more, then it should only be capped at 18 or lower, Madam Speaker. Because the higher number of committees means higher expenditure, and also the composition of these committees. You find one member of the county assembly sitting in 5 committees. Madam Speaker, it's not possible. It's not possible to work efficiently in 5 committees and be very productive. It is not possible. I think that has to be looked at, and I'm sure the committee will keep monitoring this. You put in place monitoring measures so that we don't lose money because of a bloated committee structure in our county assemblies. Madam Speaker, it is also the issue of insurance. Insurance, yes, there is a request for increased allocation, but again, this is another area that must be watched very carefully, Madam Speaker. We can look at it in two perspectives. One, that this is an avenue for corruption, and two, there may be need for increase of insurance ceilings on need basis, because, you know, insurance is there to cater for risks. Madam Speaker, let me also talk about the equitable share. I have had colleagues on the other side trying to explain that we never lost. We got 5.3 billion extra. But you see, when you factor in the element of inflation, then you realize that counties lost. And CRA, they were not foolish to advise that we have 407 billion. But how a Senate can decide to go for a lower figure of 385.4 billion and not 4 or 7 billion, I think we let down our counties. And as Honorable Sifuna said, I think when we are given an opportunity to increase our resource envelope, we must take that opportunity and increase the resources that we allocate to the counties. It is very sad. It was a sad day in this Senate that we refused more money, 407 billion, and we went for 385.4 billion. My county lost. In this revenue allocation bill, I know the allocation to my county has increased by 200 million. But that is still very little, extremely very little. It is going to increase to 5 billion 267 million. That is too little increase. But if we had gotten 407 billion, Madam Speaker, we would have increased by 5.5 billion around there. So, Madam Speaker, as a Senate, in future, we need to ensure that when we are given an opportunity to give more money to our counties, please, let's give more money to our counties so that they can run the operation smoothly. Members have talked about a number of issues. Madam Speaker, for the purposes of time, let me generally say that Article 96 of the Constitution gives us a lot of powers as a Senate, that a Senate represents the counties, and serves to protect the interest of counties and their government. Madam Speaker, to be honest, as a first-term senator here, having served in the National Assembly before, I think we need to reset this Senate. We seriously need to reset this Senate, because there are so many things that are yet to be resolved, and yet we are here as a Senate. In fact, when Senator Cheregei brought that statement on MCS, and he was reading it out, I was asking myself so many questions. That why must Senate appear like we are unable to do some things? We are there to protect counties, and counties includes county assemblies. What are we doing about it? How can SRC just decide to slash their salaries and we don't do anything? We wait until they strike and we pretend we want to do something. I think the relevant committees must quickly sit down and make a resolution, even if it means coming up with a motion on this floor, Madam Speaker, for Senate to be heard very clearly, because we have the powers under Article 96 of the Constitution. Madam Speaker, the issue of delayed disbursement of funds. The law is very clear. Article 219 requires that the national government, the account share of revenue raised by the national government should be transferred to the counties without undue delay and without deductions. That is very clear. Why are we allowing the national government to go against the law? And we are quiet. We are doing nothing about it. Madam Speaker, every now and then, every year, we pass disbursement schedule. After this bill has been passed, we will pass a disbursement schedule. Why do we do that? If the ultimate powers are with the Treasury to vary when the money will be given and how much will be given. I think the Senate has to reset itself, assert itself, and do its work. And we should not join the chorus that is crying outside there when we have the law on our side, Madam Speaker. Madam Speaker, my Committee of Public Investment and Special Funds, currently we are dealing with the issue of pension funds in the counties, where counties owe employees 60 billion shillings. And this is because some counties have not been remitting money, and control of budget does very little in this case. Madam Speaker, will soon be bringing a report here, and we want Senate to rise to the occasion on that day to say that it is important for these people to be paid their money, all the money to be paid, even if it requires us to insist that that money has to be drawn from the equitable shareable revenue to the counties. Madam Speaker, when we talk about agriculture, when we talk about health, my friend here is saying that services should be taken back, functions should be taken back to the national government. I think this is not the right house for the likes of Senator Cheregei, who is supposed to protect counties and is coming here and telling us that services should be taken back to the national government. This is a clear testimony that we have a problem here. Madam Speaker, we cannot be complaining about health not working in our counties, and yes, bulk of the money is at the national level, Madam Speaker. Why can't we get all that money to our counties? And when they fail, we can raise our voice. We have left the money in agriculture at the national level. We have left money for health in the national level. And then we keep joining the choruses of those who are saying health should go to the national level when we have something to do about it, Madam Speaker. Madam Speaker, when you talk about finance bill I know is a money bill. The Constitution does not allow us to debate it. But I think we need to relook at the Constitution, because if Senate is going to pass this bill, the division of revenue and the allocation of revenue, why should we not participate in the finance bill, Madam Speaker? Because even in these provisions here are going to be affected by the provisions in the finance bill. I have seen one county here that has raised concern about the housing levy and said the money given to them will not be enough because they will be required to pay housing levy, the 3% employer element. So, Madam Speaker, the finance bill, as much as we are saying we are not involved in it, but I think as part of our reset of Senate, it is important for us to participate fully in the budget making process so that we can be very effective as a Senate, so that we can perform our role under Article 96 in the best way possible, Madam Speaker. Madam Speaker, Senator Cheregei, who is my neighbor, said that they will not amend even a comma in that bill. I want to tell him that Parliament has procedures. Why would you take this bill to public participation to ask Kenyans to give you views when you are not going to amend even a comma? Are you trying to tell us that we are running away from our legislative duties and listening to the executive on everything? So, Madam Speaker, that finance bill in the form that it is in, it is going to kill Kenyans. It is going to kill this country. And I want to ask my former colleagues in the National Assembly not to pass that bill as it is, because that bill is very destructive, that bill is corruption, and that bill will not help this country. Madam Speaker, with those very many remarks, because of time, I want to say I support this bill with the amendments that will come at the committee of the whole House, so that our counties can get the money that they are supposed to get as per the allocation proposed. Madam Speaker, I support.
Senator Omtata.
Madam Speaker, thank you for the opportunity you have given me to support this bill. I rise to support this bill, and I associate myself with the comments that have been made by Senator Osoti, except to clarify that the Constitution does not prohibit the finance bill coming in this House. The Constitution only requires that the finance bill is introduced through the National Assembly. I think it has been a matter of habit that the bill does not come here. Madam Speaker, I rise to support this bill, but with a bit of some reservations. And my reservations are on Section 9, which reads, despite the provisions of any other law, any serious or persistent non-compliance with provisions of this Act constitutes an offense under the Public Finance Management Act. My beef is with the words, any serious or persistent non-compliance. From where I stand, I think any non-compliance with this bill should be an offense with this Act. Because then you have not defined persistent or serious, so we are creating a loophole for people to violate the Act and claim it was not serious, or it was a one-off, it was not persistent. So I would request that maybe going forward, Section 9 be looked at, and any non-compliance with this bill, with this Act when it becomes law, should be an offense under the Public Finance Management Act. I say so because we are talking of money, and you know how public money has been abused in this country. And if we give those who abuse public money any wriggle room, they will wriggle out. They will abuse and wriggle out. They should have no room to wriggle out once they mess. They should be caught up. They should be tied to the issues. So I would say that Section 9 of this bill needs to be looked at. The other issue, as we talk about the Public Finance Management Act, we may want to look at that act because we are talking about money that we send to the counties. We need to be sure that that money is used in an unaccountable manner. The chief officers' finance in some counties have been given so much power, including in my own county of Busia, that any other chief officer is irrelevant because they control the purse. I think we should, as a Senate, make a conscious decision that every chief officer, just like the permanent secretaries, should account for their departments. They do procurement, they do everything, they come up with budget. And then, at the point of payment, they cede power to the chief officer finance. Then the chief officer finance becomes a small god. That's what's obtaining in Busia. And at the end of the day, you find that you are being told, bring 10% before your bills are paid. And then it becomes very difficult to hold these people accountable. You end up with a lot of pending bills and all that kind of thing. We would like a situation whereby every department in the county is accountable for everything that it does, including how it spends money. So we should be able to empower chief officers in county government, in every department in the county government, to be able to pay for what they incur, the bills they incur. We should not cede to the chief officer finance. Look at the national government. The principal secretary in finance is not a boss of the other principal secretaries. That model should go down in the hope of stemming or controlling corruption. As I continue to contribute, I would like to make a comment on Senator Cherargei's comments that nothing will change in the finance bill. For heaven's sake, let Parliament be autonomous. Let Parliament be able to debate and agree on issues and come up with resolutions. Parliament should not be a forum for rubber stamping what the executive wants. And so I would really pray that we do that. Finally, because I don't want to talk, I would like the mover to have time to respond. I want to comment on the issue of the so-called affordable housing. I would ask those people who are pushing that to distinguish affordable housing from cheap homes. What I can see people talking about is that they want to create a mechanism of creating cheap homes for homeowners. Affordable housing is about access to decent housing. Affordable housing would be something whereby the state puts up houses and controls rents. Let's assume like in Kibra. The state develops Kibra and controls the rent in Kibra, so that the people who already live in Kibra today don't have to move out to another slum because the houses have become too expensive. But the houses are decent, but the state controls the rent there so that people are not tortured through rent. Still on the question of housing, there's a question of land. We have been told that they want county governments to do what? To set aside land for affordable housing, the so-called affordable housing. To me, the way things are happening, it is a scam for transferring public land into private hands in the name of saying affordable housing. If that is required, then that proposal must come to the Senate as custodians of the county governments and counties to make a decision whether we are going to allow the counties to be stripped of public assets in the form of land. So as I support this motion, I vehemently oppose the idea that counties should be made poorer by being forced to surrender so many acres for so-called affordable housing, which will eventually turn into homes of people, even if there's no corruption whereby the private developers get land for free, as it has happened in Pakistan, in Mombasa, where the estate was taken over by a so-called private developer that put up houses, and the people who lived in that estate now cannot afford to live there because the houses are so expensive. So I would be praying that those who are talking about housing bring it to this house where housing is devolved, and we help them distinguish between affordable housing and cheap homes. Affordable housing is not about ownership of a home. Affordable housing is about access to decent accommodation, where the state guarantees decent accommodation. So with those few remarks, I support the motion, and I thank you very much for the opportunity you have given me to comment. Thank you, Madam Speaker.
Senator Mogeni.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. I stand, Madam Speaker, to support this motion for the simple reason, Madam Speaker, that our counties need money so that they are able to discharge devolved functions in our counties. But first, Madam Speaker, I first want to register my protestation that what we are sharing today, 385.425 billion, is not what we intended to send to counties. Even the figure that we had initially proposed, 405 billion, was inadequate, but it's unfortunate, Madam Speaker, that we, as protectors of devolution, honorable senators, contributed in reducing the allocation to counties. But, Madam Speaker, that said, I first, Madam Speaker, want to bring to the attention of this House the fact that our counties are really suffering from late disbursements of money from the Treasury. As I speak, Madam Speaker, my county of Nyamira, the accounts of the executive in Nyamira have been attached by Kenya Revenue Authority because of late disbursements of pay as you earn. And you know, Madam Speaker, I have a lot of respect for former governor from Mandera. But, Madam Speaker, you know that you cannot disburse payee before you pay your employees. Disbursements for the county government of Nyamira for the month of January, February were disbursed in March, together with the disbursements for the month of March. But KRA does not want to engage in any discussions. And this is one government, Madam Speaker. As we speak today, Madam Speaker, the county government of Nyamira is yet to receive disbursements for the month of May and April. But again, KRA has issued agency notices to the county, threatening again to attach the accounts of the county government of Nyamira. Madam Speaker, we need order. We need this government to be functional. You can't not have a government, Madam Speaker, where KRA is attaching another government. I mean, we are becoming a laughing stock out there, Madam Speaker. If you don't give me money, how do I pay as you earn to KRA, yet money has not been disbursed? I hope, Madam Speaker, this is a matter that we, as senators, can move forward very quickly, have a discussion and a sitting with KRA, and we find a solution that will not really subject counties to the kind of harassment that they are facing from KRA. Number two, Madam Speaker, I hope as we disburse these funds to our counties, we must also assert our place in the Constitution. Madam Speaker, I've gone through the finance bill, and I've seen that there is a proposal to amend the Employment Act, Section 31, to deduct 3% for what is being called a housing development levy from Kenyans to develop housing units in counties. Madam Speaker, if you read the Constitution, and I want us to look at this matter in a bipartisan manner, if you read the Constitution, the only obligation the Constitution bestows to the national government is policy. All this issue about housing projects at the counties, the custodians of land at the counties, is the preserve of county government. If you read Article 96, you will arrive at a conclusion, Madam Speaker, that these, the proposed amendments in the finance bill touching on housing cannot have constitutional validity unless it is considered by the two houses. And there is something, you know, the devil is always in the detail. Why, Madam Speaker, is the government making such a fundamental policy proposal hidden in a finance bill? Why was that law not brought as a standalone so that the two houses discharge their constitutional mandate as bestowed in the Constitution, because that's a matter that directly affects counties. Madam Speaker, I want to urge my colleagues, whether you are UDA or Azimio, to stand up and defend the Constitution of the Republic of Kenya by insisting, Madam Speaker, that if that provision will not be dropped, then we must insist that it should come to the Senate, and if it does not come, we should join the case that has been filed by Senator Okiya Omtata to defend the mandate of this House, Madam Speaker. Finally, I want to appeal to the President, William Ruto, to be a man of wisdom. Madam Speaker, we have lived in this country, and we have seen many presidents. Personally, I saw President Kenyatta, President retired Moi, the late, President Kibaki, the late, President Uhuru Kenyatta. You must listen to the people. You must listen to the people. Madam Speaker, I've gone to Nyamira, I've done consultation with my people, and they have resoundingly said they don't want their money to be deducted for the so-called housing levy. So you must listen to, if you are a good leader, you must listen to the voice of the people. So I'm urging the President, William Ruto, please listen to the voice of the people before it is too late make legislative proposals from your other side that will drop the proposed amendment to Section 31. Kenyans don't want this thing called housing levy. If you push it down their throat, they will fight it. And if they fight it, you will not have left a legacy. If you want to have a housing project, put food on the table for Kenyans first. Put food on the table for Kenyans first. If we have food, we have employment, we have health care, NHIF is being honored, we can now ask for housing levy. But for now, Madam Speaker, on behalf of the people of Nyamira, I'm very clear that they don't want this housing levy, and I will oppose it when I get an opportunity, may it be on the floor, out there, or in court. I support the motion, Madam Speaker.
I now call upon the mover to reply.
Thank you, Madam Speaker, and I do beg to reply. I start by highly thanking my colleagues in Finance and Budget for the commitment that they have shown in this bill. I can't forget to really thank the Secretariat led by our clerk, Gitonga, and his team. And also, Madam Speaker, to thank all the colleagues, all senators that have positively contributed to this bill, the amendments that they have requested us to make, which we have keenly, with my chair seated here at this particular time, dedicated to be able to note each and every issue, each and every concern that our colleagues have raised. This is among the very important bills as a new member in Senate that have paid very keen interest in the key bills that make us be able to undertake our roles as senators. It's among the bills like the Division of Revenue Bill, the county allocation, Equalization Fund Administration Bill, and also the County Additional Allocation Bill, which we look forward to still discuss in this House. These are among the key bills in this Senate that help us to be able to execute our mandate by also supporting devolution and supporting the counties. Different issues have been raised, and I want to state, Madam Speaker, that in our committee we were able to take in different concerns from the different county assemblies. And some of these concerns were ranging from purchase of different motor vehicles in different regions, because what they were able to inherit is quite old, not in a condition to be used. Some of them also were requesting for recruitment of more staff in these counties. Some of them were also requesting for purchase of different furnitures because what they have currently is not in good condition. The issues of security services were raised, especially in counties like Turkana County, Marsabit, Mandera. The assemblies requested for more funding for these particular services, knowing very well, Madam Speaker, the security issues in this particular region, Madam Speaker. Funds for public participation, and also operation and maintenance of the different services and facilities that they have within the county levels, Madam Speaker. These are issues that we were able to note as a committee very keenly. And also, Madam Speaker, what was also key noted was the bloating of the committees that some of the counties have. Some counties have up to 24 committees, and this hence increases the cost of maintaining these committees. Concerns have been raised by colleagues, especially Senator Sosi also raised the same. And also as a committee, we take that keenly and advise on committees between 14 to a maximum of 17, depending on the different issues pertaining these different counties in these particular places, Madam Speaker. Madam Speaker, I also note the issue of the legal services. Yes, and I want to state, colleagues have mentioned and also advised on in-house legal departments within the different counties so as to cut down on this cost. Madam Speaker, also, we as a committee also do recommend on contract agreements. We know there are situations and there are counties, like for example, my county of Nairobi, whereby during the impeachment processes, the cost of legal services was very high or went very high. Madam Speaker, issues of PFM Act amendment have also been mentioned, and colleagues have also requested on the issue of the disbursement schedule, us as a committee looking at. And I want to promise and affirm that this is a very key issue, because it is one thing to allocate funds, Madam Speaker. It is another to allocate them timely to these different counties, so as to ensure services are continuously delivered as required. Staff are also paid, and very much paid on time. But Madam Speaker, I want to emphasize on the issue of accountability. Colleagues have mentioned on accountabilities, and to state that one of our key roles is oversight, which ensures that we go down and be able to understand, the senators, how these funds have been used. Are the projects that we are fighting for being able to taken to the levels of the ground? Let me wind up, Madam Speaker, by just touching and emphasizing and saying the concerns on the county assembly ceilings and the county executive ceilings have been mentioned, and have been mentioned on a probability of lowering these amounts. And you realize, Madam Speaker, these concerns come because members have to show that they are fighting for more funds in their different counties. But it is good for the members also to note very quickly that the county treasury staff, the numbers have been, the amounts have been reduced for the remuneration. The rent for the governor's residence has also been scrapped. Salaries of governor and deputy governor have also been slightly reduced, and hence reduction of these particular amounts that are stated here. Salaries of county secretary and chief officers, Madam Speaker, based on the graduated scale, have also, at this initial point, they are at a minimum level. So each year there is annual increment, and so as years go by, the increments will continue increasing, Madam Speaker. In those many remarks, Madam Speaker, I really, really appreciate colleagues and confirm and support that we are going to really be keen and be able to ensure that all these amendments are captured. And pursuant to Standing Order 66-1, I do request that putting of the question be deferred to a later date. I beg to reply. Thank you, Madam Speaker.
Thank you. The putting of the question is deferred to Tuesday next week. Next order. Senator Mutinda for Majority Leader.
Madam Speaker, pursuant to Standing Order 57-1, I hereby present the business of the Senate for the week commencing 13th June 2023. Madam Speaker, there are a total of 24 bills pending conclusion in the Senate. Out of these, 20 are at the second reading stage and 4 at the committee of the whole. 17 reports on the bills have been tabled by the respective standing committees to which the bills were committed, while 7 reports are yet to be tabled, pursuant to Standing Order 148. I allow the committees for the tabling of the reports on the bills and urge that we continue with the same spirit. In the same breath, Madam Speaker, I thank honorable senators for the commitment and dedication they expressed during this sitting on Tuesday, 6 June 2023, whereby 2 bills were passed. These bills have since been forwarded to the National Assembly for consideration. As indicated in today's order paper, number 10, the County Allocation of Revenue Bill has been listed. I urge all of us to avail ourselves this afternoon to consider and pass this bill. I cannot overstate the importance of passing the bill, which is a bill that will unlock the release of funds to our counties. Further, a total of 55 motions have been filed by senators. Out of these motions, 29 have been adopted, 1 was negated, and 25 are pending before the Senate. I urge movers of the business to be available in the chamber whenever their business is scheduled in order to prosecute the same for speedy transition on the next stage. Madam Speaker, with regard to petitions, the Senate has so far received 22 that have been committed to respective standing committees pursuant to Standing Order 2381. 10 petitions are already due for reporting by the respective standing committees to which the petitions were committed. I urge the respective standing committees to expedite consideration of the petitions and table reports thereon. I urge the other standing committees to process the petition referred to them within 60-day period as per the provision of Standing Order 2382. Statements are increasingly being sought pursuant to Standing 53 and others issued pursuant to Standing Order 52. I urge standing committees to promptly consider the statements and report back to the House within the mechanism provided for the standing orders. Madam Speaker, more questions have been filled, approved by the Speaker, and subsequently conveyed to the respective Cabinet Secretaries. At this meeting held on Tuesday, 30th May 2023 and 6th of June 23, the Senate Business Committee approved the set of questions to appear in the order paper for the morning sitting of Wednesday, 14th, 23 and Wednesday, 21st June 23. The summary of the questions and the Cabinet Secretary to appear on that day are as follows. On 14th June, question by Senator John Kenywa, Cabinet Secretary for Interior and Administration, to respond on the state of security in Laikipia County and the wider Rift Valley region. Question by the same senator to the Cabinet Secretary for Interior to respond on curbing rampant abuse of ketamine. Madam Speaker, question by Senator Chute to the Cabinet Secretary of East Africa Community, the ASLs and Regional Development, to respond on the state of tendering for relief food in the country. And Senator Chute again to the Cabinet Secretary of Investment, Trade and Industry to respond on the pre-qualification of companies to import commodities by the Kenya National Trading Corporation. On 21st, by Senator Chute again to the Cabinet Secretary of Agriculture to respond on the importation of duty-free food commodities. By Senator Lomenen to the Cabinet Secretary of Foreign and Diaspora to respond on the inaction of the Kenyan government to hasten the release of Turkana pastoralists arrested in Uganda. By Senator Mbogwa to Cabinet Secretary of Health on accessibility of health facilities and services with persons with disability. Senator Chute again, Cabinet Secretary of Agriculture, to respond on the implementation and audit to Kenya Climate Smart Agriculture. Finally, on Tuesday, 13/23, the Senate Business Committee will consider and approve the business of the day. This will contain business that will not be concluded from today's order paper and any other business scheduled for the Senate Business Committee. The order paper on Wednesday 14th, 23 and for Thursday 15th will contain business that will not be concluded on 13th and on Wednesday 14th respectively. The SBC will also schedule any other business pursuant to the standing orders. I thank you and hereby lay the statement on the table of the Senate for Aaron Cheriot, the Majority Leader.
Honorable Senators, it is now 6:32 p.m. Time to adjourn the Senate. The Senate therefore stands adjourned until Tuesday, 13th June 2023 at 2:30 p.m.